Good afternoon. I hope you all had a good lunch break, and now ready to sort of go through another session. I'm told that we can start, and we'll need to be sort of really trying to keep the time. Let me sort of start by welcoming the panel here. Mr. Zainal Kassim, Mr. John Gilbert, and Mr. Azman Ismail. They're all very much really known for their work, and we are fortunate to hear them talk about the pure mutual route to Takaful. Just to sort of give you my own sort of understanding about the mutuals, I think the mutual route to Takaful is probably sort of maybe the pure cooperative route. If we look at what's Majmal Fiqh has actually encapsulated the cooperative principles, you would really sort of feel that we are actually very much talking about mutuals. They are very much saying that they're drawing a line, very clear line between making profits, which is a conventional way, and not really sort of focusing on takaful, but on mutual aspects, which is really the takaful side. But anyway, mutual is something that we would like to sort of learn more about, because as we know, takaful that is being practiced is a little bit sort of a hybrid from the pure mutual aspects. It is a more commercial aspect, what we call takaful tijari, and we do have the shareholders and the policyholders. And in the earlier sessions, we were saying that maybe there's a conflict of interest between the shareholders and the policyholders, which is the participants. But let's hear from our panel, what we actually can learn from the way the mutuals can actually pave our way into takaful. So with that, I would like to invite Zainal to come over and take the floor.
I think, first disclaimer, I think, Dr. Sri Hassan Kamil this morning sort of shared with the audience here in terms of the success story of Takaful Malaysia. I come from Malaysia. I'm based in Kuala Lumpur. What I'm going to present now is not necessarily something which is reflective of Takaful in Malaysia, but something which I have struggled with over the last 30 years as I saw the Takaful industry grow globally in terms of what is the next act, if you like, in terms of Takaful. Are we on the right trajectory in terms of how Takaful should be developed, or should we actually step back and then consider an alternative to the current model? First of all, I'm going to start with what are the afflictions affecting Takaful companies globally. As I said, this is not actually Malaysia. I think it's obvious that as far as any new industry is concerned, there will be a need for talent, people who actually understand the business, people who actually are able to contribute towards the business and make it a success. Well, Takaful is new, and whenever people ask me about Malaysia's experience, I've always said that for 8 years in Malaysia, we had only one Takaful company, Takaful Malaysia. And if you look in terms of the leaders of the Takaful industry now in Malaysia, you find that their DNA, the way in which they have developed, if you like, their talent, can be traced back to Takaful Malaysia, in the sense that that was where there was a school of hard knocks in terms of they learn what to do and what not to do. If you basically look at, look at another country, for example, in Africa, and you want to start Takaful in that country, you have to also appreciate that in order for Takaful to be successful in that country, you need to have the talent. Then there's the issue about system. Now, system is something very, very important in terms of any insurance operation because it's all about service. You're trying to keep your costs down. And the problem with Takaful is that you cannot simply just pick a system out from the shelf and say this will work. I mean, we have issues in Malaysia whereby, Takaful companies which have been around for many, many years still basically have issues with their system. And this is not good. And then there's the issue about distribution. You can have the best product in the world, if you cannot have a good distribution system, it's not going to be successful. So this is another problem that you have for many Takaful companies globally. The next issue that Takaful companies face is in terms of regulatory challenges. When you talk about regulations, you have to actually accept that regulations in many parts of the world are basically geared towards providing or supporting a market where the insurance companies compete against each other, whereby you compete on service, you compete on price, and effectively the regulators' sort of perspective is to ensure that customers are treated fairly, but also that the insurance company, whilst they compete on price, that they are there when it comes to paying claims down the road. Basically, they are solvent. The problem with Takaful is that you don't have capital. Takaful companies don't really have capital because the shareholders' capital, if you like, is there from the perspective that the regulator says you need to actually have a minimum capital. But as far as real capital is concerned, the risk pool has zero. What you have is that you've got people contributing to that pool, and from that pool you pay out claims. So where's the capital? So how can a Takaful entity compete with a conventional company based on price? One has got ample capital, the other has got zero capital. Shareholders' capital in the Takaful business is basically there for the purpose of card, if you like, loan. Then there's the issue about, let me have a look at this, the competition aspect of it. Goes back to this thing about pricing, because you go to a market and you ask a person, how do you choose your product, how do you choose the provider, if you like? And one of the criteria will always be price. And you have a market whereby there's intense competition between the Takaful companies, between Takaful and conventional. It does mean that it's likely, more than likely, that the risk pool will be in a position of deficit. The next point is shareholders' expectation. And just now, when Alberto asked me about the conflict, he was alluding to the fact that as far as shareholders is concerned, they're there to make money. However, as far as the participants is concerned, they're there basically to help each other in times of need. So can you actually manage those two expectations simultaneously? Can you have a position whereby the shareholders is able to maximize the profit at the same time as provide the best service, the best kind of deal for the policyholders? I think logically that's be very, very difficult. Then you go back to the consumer. As far as the consumer is concerned, what does he want? Yes, I want it to be Sharia compliant, but I also want it to be cheap. I want it to be cheap, and I want to have a surplus refund as well. Where does the surplus refund comes from? It comes from the fact that the premiums are basically prices in a surplus, which means that you compare two products. One actually provides in a surplus refund, and the other does not. The one that provides a surplus refund should, actually speaking, be more expensive than the one that does not. But the market does not differentiate between the two. Now, in terms of going back to the consumer aspect of it, they also want the benefit to be guaranteed. If you don't have capital, how can you guarantee benefits? Guarantee means you have to provide some kind of if you like, a reserve, that when times are good, you accumulate the reserve. When times are bad, you use the reserve to ensure that benefits are paid in full. So it's very difficult to provide guaranteed benefits in a pure Takaful operation, a pure sort of in a mutual operation. And then you've got this issue about, in the last session, the issue about tabarruk. The Takaful industry has been around for 40 years, but Sharia scholars still argue about should there be a surplus refund because you're providing a donation. Why should you get something back? It's interesting to note that the 2013 Fiqh Academy ruling, the recent one, sort of does away with this concept of tabarruk. they look at the concept of mutuality, cooperative, if you like. And under that sort of model, there's no problem about paying surplus because you set out the rules and regulations in terms of how the pool is actually managed. So then you go back to the other stakeholders, the shareholders and the management of the company. Are they basically to blame? Are they basically to blame in terms of the way in which Takaful is actually progressing in this point of time? Is it actually a model issue? Basically that the model that they're actually using makes it impossible for Takaful to be sustainable? Or is it exactly a mindset issue? Because one of the things that you notice in the Middle East, for example, is a high turnover of CEOs. And the CEOs that comes into the Takaful company are normally coming from the conventional sort of stream, if you like. Okay? And in the conventional stream, the formula has been, get market share. Through it be pricing or through it be service, but you must get your market share. And then effectively you can actually build a profitable business from that. But one of the ways to get market share is to actually price your product such as very competitive. But you can't do that in Takaful because you don't have capital. So what's the question that we need to ask ourselves? Takaful is about risk sharing. It's not about risk transfer. And some of the problems that the current Takaful companies are facing basically can be resolved if you move closer to the mutual model. Because the mutual model, if you think about it, is more about affinity groups, is more about helping each other. Pricing is not really the biggest thing that you have in terms of the reason why you have a mutual or you are participating in a mutual. Would the mutual model would the mutual model actually result in industry or Takaful industry that's more sustainable? It's something we need to consider. Now, when you look at Takaful as it's actually implemented in many countries, in several countries, you find that effectively there are some differences. I mean, we saw that this morning as well, whereby there was some discussion in terms of A Takaful model, B Takaful model, C Takaful model. I mean, for the public, this is going to be confusing. I mean, why is it so difficult? When I pray to Allah, I'd be like, I know what to do. Whether you pray in Malaysia, you pray in Mecca, you pray in Africa, it's all the same. But here in Takaful, depending on where you are, it's different. Why? Because if you've got different ways of doing things, you need to have a different system, you need to have a different talent, if you like, you got to teach them differently, so it's going to add on to cost. And that is something we try to minimize because we're going to compete on price. What about investors? Because investors are expecting a return on their capital. If you are going to tell them that you're going to get half the return on capital that you might get in investing in insurance, would they want to go actually invest in Takaful? Because one of the things that I find quite frustrating is that people in a new market, people rush once to do Takaful because they think it's a gold mine. They think they can make money easily from Takaful. Far be it from it. You're starting from scratch. You've got to incur additional costs as compared to your competitors because you've got Sharia board governance, so lots of stuff, system you've got to modify to do Takaful. You are not going to make money anytime soon. And the question I have is this. Down the road, when shareholders of the Takaful company realize they're not going to make money, will they exit the industry? Because as you see now, Takaful or Takaful companies have already exited the industry. This is something which is very bad, if you like, for Takaful, for Takaful, because you don't want investors to leave. Discretionary mutual. So I'm going to talk about discretionary mutual. Discretionary mutual is something which has been around for a long time. All right, in the United Kingdom, you've got the military mutual. It's like affinity group, if you like. Soldiers, veterans, if you like. In Australia, there's also discretionary mutual. One example here is uni mutual. It's basically a mutual for universities. They self-insure, if you like, the buildings that you have in the campus. Now, I underline certain words here, which I think have quite a strong relationship, if you like, to Takaful. In discretionary mutual, the claims are paid on the discretion of its board. Basically, they're not obliged to pay claims. It doesn't mean that they won't pay claims, In fact, sometimes they pay claims when they don't have to pay claims because they're not subject to terms and conditions like you have in the policy, whereby you can avoid paying claims because certain conditions are not met. In a discretionary mutual, you can do away with that. You can still pay the claims. Because it's not an insurance company, it's not subject to insurance supervision. And that's where the problem is for Takaful as well. Because, as I said just now, in terms of most markets, the regulations are there to actually ensure solvency. And the problem of that is that, the more capital you require for the company for solvency, the more expensive will be the product because you have to service that capital. So in discretionary mutual, you don't need capital. So that means it can translate to cheaper products. The other thing is that, I already mentioned this about claim payments not being guaranteed. But the fourth point here is the fact that, contributions that you pay to discretionary mutual, because the board of directors of discretionary mutual are not obliged to pay, then why are they paying this premium to discretionary mutual? Well, the only thing I can think of is that, this premium are basically donations. Does that not ring a bell? So who manages these discretionary mutuals? Well, there are actually companies out there whose job it is to actually manage this discretionary mutual. So they do all the technical aspects of it. They do claims underwriting, they do policy documentation, they do sales, make sure that risk management is in place. So it's professionally run, if you like. And the beauty of this is that the skill sets, if you like, is in one entity, and that entity can actually provide this service to many discretionary mutuals at the best price. So what happens here is that the discretionary mutual has got a board, and basically the board has a contract with the service company, and it pays a predetermined fee. Does that ring a bell? Compared to Takaful, you pay a fee. But what's different here is that if that entity, service entity, does not provide appropriate service, they slacken, if you like, they don't do the job, you can fire that entity and hire another entity. If you are a policyholder of a Takaful company, there's no way you can do that. The only way you can do is you have to surrender your policy and go to another Takaful company. But once you surrender your policy, you are at a loss. So what is the thing here that I'm trying to actually promote here? Well, basically, can we not have a two-tier Takaful sort of system, basically? For the individuals, you have the Takaful models that we might have currently, Wakala model, Mudarabah model, but they service, if you like, the individual policy holders. But why not use the system, the capability, the talent, if you like, that's in that Takaful company, or even maybe a re-Takaful company, to actually provide service similar to the discretionary mutual service companies to affinity groups. Like the point here is that, those groups at the bottom there. Now, the good thing about that is that effectively the surplus in any of this discretionary mutual remains with that discretionary mutual, because one of the things that we found out, in terms of Takaful, for example, the cedent company normally is very jealous of the surplus. They say, hey, my business basically is very profitable. Why do you want to put it in the pool with somebody else's business so that, my surplus will be shared with somebody else? The idea of sharing a surplus is something sometimes, people find not good for them because they think they got profitable business. But in this model, basically, the surplus remains within the entity. Now, in terms of the way how you protect your business, your claims, if you like, or ensure that you can more than likely pay claims, is you use Takaful. Now, here, in this particular example here, on the x-axis, if you like, accumulation of claims, you can cut it off by using, Takaful that cuts off, if you got more than the expected number of claims because of a catastrophe. In the y-axis, if you like, large claims, you can cut it off. So the fund actually has got its own retention level. And if claims exceed because of catastrophe, because of certain events, you then get the Takaful company to actually provide the protection. So my final slide. Can we afford to continue in the current path of life as far as Takaful is concerned? I come from a developed Takaful market, and Takaful companies like Takaful Malaysia, Takaful Etika, they're well on their way because when they started their business, basically, there was not much competition. But in terms of the new Takaful companies, those were established 5 years ago, they are still struggling in terms of trying to get critical size. So the issue now you go to another country whereby you have competition from other Takaful companies from day one. It is going to be very difficult for them to build up the surplus because they're competing on price. So what I'm proposing here is that governments should allow the establishment of discretionary mutuals, because UK and Australia are a bit unique, because effectively there are only two countries that I know of that actually provides for this sort of option, if you like. Because the service companies, if you like, are able to actually provide the services which ensure that these mutuals, discretionary mutuals, if you like, are run professionally. There are some countries, and I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, about when we talk about financial inclusion and Takaful, there are some countries whereby, you have self-insurance, if you like, in terms of groups of people, but the problem with that is that they're more than likely they're not professionally run. So it's more likely that they're going to fail down the road. But you've got a professional kind of service provider that ensure that they cross the T's and dot I's. You can have the best of both worlds, whereby you can have a successful Takaful operation or service company in this case, and a successful as well, mutual kind of Takaful fund. Now, the last point is something which also I feel is the reason why we should allow this. It's because of the fact that, the key to a success for insurance and for Takaful as well is effectively having critical size, whereby you're able to provide, you're able to, not just to provide, you're able to justify your expenses, whereby you're able to spread your costs over your business that you've got. You start a business, you've got zero premium, your expenses are already up to here. But if you're able to grow the business quickly to critical size, then it's more than likely you can be profitable from the perspective of, as far as Takaful is concerned, the wakalah fee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zainal, for this very thought-provoking presentation. Basically, if I understand correctly, in a Takaful structure, you have a wakil. And then, wakil is really the main administrative operational part who has to look at, how to manage the money coming in and create the reserves and so on. And then you have the other part, which is really the business where it comes from, the top line. And if you were to have discretionary mutuals, who can actually concentrate on building the affinity groups and therefore multiplying that, then actually on an ethical basis, that can multiply quite nicely, perhaps, and then feed into one service agent who can do the job very, very efficiently. So really thought-provoking. Our next speaker is John Gilbert, who would like to tell us about more on perhaps UK Friendly Societies and so on.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I was very struck by the introduction that we had this morning from Dr. Alberto Bugnoni, where he spoke about two themes, that of timing and of values, which very much chimes with what I want to talk to you about in this very brief presentation on mutuality. I'll start with what I've called the academic case for mutuality, which is, I think, what Dr. Bugnoni was talking about when he was mentioning values. And I feel slightly presumptuous here, coming as a Christian in a gathering of Muslims, to make an academic argument about your kind of insurance, and especially in your tradition of great scholarship. So I just put this argument in front of you and say that I was introduced to the chap whose name I've put up on the screen, Mahmoud El Gamal, who's an American, or based in America. He's Egyptian extraction, professor of Islamic studies at Rice University in the States. And I was introduced by somebody who came to a previous talk I gave at a previous Takaful summit, to his paper, which has the very polemical title, Mutuality as an Antidote to Rent-Seeking Sharia Arbitrage in Islamic Finance. Now, it's a very short paper. Here it is. It's one of two bits of paper I'm going to wave at you today. You can find it on Google and see the arguments that he makes, which are basically that much of traditional Islamic finance structures replicate those of conventional finance and therefore lead to a less efficient and, in terms of values, perhaps a less solid result than might otherwise have been the case. El-Gamal went on to write the book that I've mentioned in the second slide, which was published here in the UK in 2009, I think slightly earlier in the States. So that's briefly the academic argument or the values argument. There's also a very strong practical argument, and that is that a pure mutual solution is a simpler solution than many of the Wakala or Moderator models of Takaful that one sees. It's also transparent, which is a good thing, particularly in the eyes of the regulators. And here in the UK and elsewhere in the world, I believe as well, there is increasing scepticism following the financial crisis of 2008 against what are termed complex financial products. So the less complexity, the better as far as the regulators are concerned. Dr. Brugnoni also spoke about timing, and I think that fits in here as well, because he said that mutuals have been in existence here in Europe for 300 odd years. Here's a ready-made vehicle for Islamic finance, at least here in Europe. But it's not all simple. There is a case against mutuality, and that has been touched on by Zainal in terms of the capital constraints. Leaving aside the discretionary mutual model, which is an interesting approach, but in a contractual scenario, then you do have capital constraints because the only source of capital to a mutual has been the accumulated profits over the years from its business, which have been contributed by policyholders and form what's called the inherited estate. That's compounded, or has been compounded in the UK, as those mutuals who've looked at the idea of setting up Sharia-compliant products have had some difficulty in finding suitable Takaful, and so have come across this problem of a lack of capital. There is also, if you're putting an Islamic product onto an existing mutual, there is the difficulty of it being contaminated by un-Islamic investments, which are already made by that mutual, particularly in insurance, where the regulators put such reliance on debt instruments. But here in the UK, we have evolved an answer to that, and that is, we're not moving on the slides. We've moved on. That is the Mutuals Deferred Shares Act, which was passed by the UK Parliament just under a year ago, just before our last general election. And what that is some enabling legislation. It's a very short Act of Parliament. Here it is. That's it. It runs to just a few pages. But what it does is allow mutuals to issue an instrument which counts as Tier 1, the highest form of capital under the European Solvency II capital regulations. It's effectively permanent share capital, but it's fully transferable, and there are no restrictions on how it can be remunerated. So it can be remunerated in a purely Sharia-compliant way. It preserves mutuality by placing restrictions on voting rights of shareholders so that they couldn't vote to demutualize the issuer, and it restricts the voting rights also to one holder, one vote. As I say, it's enabling legislation. It has been passed by the UK Parliament. The UK Treasury is currently in the process of evolving the regulations which will bring it into effect. It's been a rather long, drawn-out process, but we are hoping that that those regulations will be out for consultation within the next few weeks. And already this idea has begun to draw some interest from other jurisdictions, particularly in the United States, and interestingly, in what Zainal was saying, in Australia, but hopefully from the Islamic world as well. So if you'd like to know more about that, here are my contact details. I'm wearing two hats, one is for the law firm Hogan Lovells, the other for my consultancy practice M&G Advisory Services, and those will be on the slides that are going to be circulated and available to you. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Very interesting development. Capital for the mutuals. Look forward to how it sort of pans out in UK and other countries. I come to the third speaker, Azman. He's got around 32 slides, but I would like to request you to, just think about the time as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajmal. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. حمد الشاكرين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إله أولين والآخرين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Ajmal, my colleagues, Iqbal and everybody, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I know Ajmal is asking me to be very quick, but I have a big problem because I've got a diarrhea of the mouth and cannot stop talking. So I will, with this kind of disease, it's very, very difficult, but I'll try. And what happens that last year, I was talking about, the same issue, and actually the market share is very significant. USA, we have 35%, France, Japan, all, Germany and all the others, they have more than 40% controlled by mutuals market share. So, but we have a slight problem here. Because over the years, initially we have mutuals, we have what they call the demutualization. So this demutualization is encouraged or enforced by regulators. And last year also I talked about the dark side of demutualization, how you can steal money from the mutual companies. Now, what happens here is that in Malaysia, for example, MCIS, we have Malaysian Cooperative Insurance Society. It was a mutual company, but the law did not allow. So we had an Insurance Act 1996 that prohibit the existence of mutuals. So this is happening all over the world. And if you can see in USA, we have this, because very fast, don't worry, it's only a few seconds per slide. And this one you can see that 35% non-life and 25% for life in Europe. And in UK, we have all the old mutuals. I'll talk about NFU mutual a little bit later. And there are three issues, three S's, not ASSES or some other spelling, but SSS. First is survive. Can mutual survive? Do mutuals survive? And then sustain. Is it sustainable? And then, when I say survive, it may be 1 decade. Sustainable, maybe a few decades. but succeed is maybe 1 century. So we have this demutualization, we have prohibitive legal infrastructure for mutuals. Now, why demutualization? Because according to John also and Zainal, basically it's access to capital. Okay, but now we don't have that issue anymore in UK, in Australia, but in other countries we still have the issue. Because when you talk about this issue of capital and you want to expand very fast, actually when you look at the study, expansion is one of the greatest problems in the insurance failures. One of the factors is that, you see, rapid growth, 64 out of 300 cases of insurance failures are due to rapid growth. Okay? And then for further information, you can read my paper on priority jurisprudence. Okay, basically I think it's the wrong place. It's the wrong slide in the wrong place. You know, when I was here last time, we had this fasting month. So I had this, what do you call it? When you don't eat properly, hernia, something like that. I don't know, not hernia, the other one. So I went to see the doctor told me, huh? Not ulcer. It's somewhere, I cannot mention the place. So I had this, and then the doctor said, don't worry, it's just abscess in the wrong place. Okay? So anyway, back to the issues. We have these academicians talking about all this. I have to be very fast. So you see that these are over 10 years period. You have 1921 to 1930, and then over the years you see conversion from mutuals to commercial insurance or non-mutual companies. And in UK also we had 18 building societies, 4 farmer co-ops and all this. So you see that the regulators are there any regulators here? Because I want to mention the word CULPRIT. No, don't worry, I'm not against regulators actually. So is demutualization good or bad? This is an issue. Should you go for mutual or should you go for stock companies? This is a big problem, just like the problem that the British people are facing. I don't know how this guy got here, but basically it's the same issue. How do you decide? Should you go for mutual, in or out? Okay, you cannot stand at the, when I was young, I remember we took the bus, not like the bus here in London. We have to take up the stairs and walk up the stairs, and when it's full, we saw the sign, get in or get out. That means you cannot stand on the stairs. Okay? So we have a slightly, you know, our transport system, our bus system is a bit different. Your bus system here is like in India. You know, in India, but the Indian buses, the red buses, actually they don't stop in India. So I asked the driver, why don't you stop? Because when you want to get on the bus, you have to jump up the bus, and you want to get down, you have to jump down. So I asked, what's the problem? Why don't you stop? He said, sir, if we stop, we cannot start. Okay. So, okay, coming back to this issue, hey, I think it's true, correct, isn't it? Huh? In Lagos too, okay, it's not only in India, in Lagos also. So, coming back to demutualization, we have the, you know, this is a song by Al Stewart. It's a very famous song by Al Stewart. It's not Rod Stewart, Al Stewart. Rod Stewart is the one with a bit different, but same age. Rod Stewart is a bit older, but this is Al Stewart who looks a bit younger. And if you are their age, basically the probability of you living for another 10 years, that means this is the 10th, what? Okay, 20th anniversary. If you are male, 1 in 40. There's a probability of you surviving is 1 in 40. And if you are female, 1 in 60. Okay, coming back to this one, he wrote a nice song, you know. The song is called License to Steal. So in the context of demutualization, in this context, it is about lawyers. Sorry, lawyers, please don't sue me for libel or slander. Okay, but I'm just quoting Al Stewart. But for demutualization, from what I see, the license to steal is very open. So we have that problem. and from Sharia, from IAIS, they concede that, mutual has its strengths. Here, these are some of the strengths. And are the arguments of demutualization valid? There's only one issue, which is the capital adequacy and solvency issue. And John has mentioned about the Mutual Deferred Shares Act, so which is a good thing that happened in UK, and I hope, and he hope also, actually he hope, I'm just parroting what he said and what Zainal said, that we hope that other countries, other regulators will follow suit. Because to me, that's the only main issue of demutualization. So other things, there's no issue, including the RBC or solvency, and we have this. Suppose in a country, in fact, we have one more actually. One more, what I call one more access to capital. Okay, you talk about deferred mutual shares. Okay, let me go quickly. Sorry, Ajmal, I have to go quickly. I know he's looking at me with a certain, like a girl looking at the man, Oh, you're looking at the slide, sorry. Okay. So we have a legal maxim. We have this in Latin. I cannot pronounce Latin so much, but I Googled it and I saw it says, lex necessitatis lex temporis instantis. I don't know what it means, but basically the law of necessity is the law of time. That is the time present. In Islam also we have another legal maxim that says changes in the law follows changes in the time. That means you cannot say this is it. You have, maybe last time demutualization was good, was better, but now I think the opinion is changing. Mutuals are better, that is the opinion currently. So we have to change with time, but it's good that you memorize this legal maxim, which I have mentioned before in Abu Dhabi 2 years ago, but I would like to mention the legal maxim again because it is a very good legal maxim. Changes in the law follows changes in time. That means time changes, the law changes. In Arabic it says, تغير الأحكام بتغير الأزمان. That's what I want you to memorize. Okay? Okay, access to capital is not impossible, but slower, but now we have Mutual Deferred Shares Act, so there's another issue, but maybe we should look at what we call crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is also interesting, Crowdfunding is basically, okay, I won't go into details about the formula because it will take 3 days and 3 nights to explain, but basically crowdfunding can be debt-based or donation-based. Now, what happened is that in the West, it's a problematic because when you get source money for crowdfunding, it cannot be an equity and so on. So what they do is they give free, like if you have a book, you produce books. Maybe if you put 1,000, I give you 10 free books. If you put 10,000, I give you 100 free books, something like that. But in Malaysia, we have developed something, the Securities Commission of Malaysia, we have this developed crowdfunding. So before that, let's look at crowdfunding, okay?
Growing up in Taiwan as a daughter of calligrapher, one of my most treasured memories was my mother showing me the beauty, the shape, and the form of Chinese characters. Ever since then, I was fascinated by this incredible language. But to an outsider, it seems to be as impenetrable as the Great Wall of China. Over the past few years, I've been wondering if I can break down this wall so anyone who wants to understand and appreciate the beauty of this sophisticated language to do so. I started thinking about how a new, fast method of learning Chinese might be useful. Since the age of 5, I started to learn how to draw every single stroke for each character at correct sequencing. I learn new characters every day during the course of the next 15 years. Since we only have 5 minutes, it's better that we have a fast and simpler way. A Chinese scholar would understand 20,000 characters. You only need 1,000 to understand the basic literacy. The top 200 will allow you to comprehend 40% of basic literature, enough to read road sign, restaurant menu, to understand the basic idea of the web pages or the newspapers.
So this is, she went for Kickstart. She got, I think, 200,000 pounds quickly. This is her idea of learning Chinese very fast. So you want to learn Chinese, you go to see her. Within, I think, 1 hour, you will understand 32 characters, or even 10 minutes. This was 5 minutes, and I could remember 32 characters. So easy to learn Chinese. Or maybe because my mother was Chinese. I don't know. My father is Indian, by the way. So in Malaysia, if your mother is Chinese, your father is Indian, you are a Malay. So I am a Malay. So that's very unique. So all of you more minutes, okay? Crowdfunding. So I think there is a potential for crowdfunding for Takaful, for mutuals. So what happens is that in Malaysia, we have the Islamic crowdfunding. We can do that. In other countries, there's no provision yet in the law, but in Malaysia we already have, and we have other initiatives. And people say, Azman, are you crazy? Yes, I am crazy. In fact, many people told me I'm crazy. But actually, how do you know whether I am crazy or you are crazy? Maybe you are crazy and you think I'm crazy. Correct? Because that's true, because many things happen and we did not think. And I quote many good, all these great people. Thomas Watson, sorry, not Walton. I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. There is no reason for any individual to have a computer in his home. Ken Olsen, founder of DEC. And then Robert Metcalfe, founder of 3Com. I predict that the internet will soon go spectacularly supernova in 1996. It will collapse, okay? And then who else said? We have Bill Gates even. He made a wrong prediction. Apple is already outdated according to Microsoft, a former Microsoft chief technology officer. Bill Gates said, within 5 years, I predict that the tablet will be the most popular form of PC sold in America. 2 years from now, spam will be solved. They all got it wrong. So for crowdfunding, I may get it wrong, but it is something that all of us can think about. And but the regulators, the problem, I'm not blaming the regulators, because if I'm a regulator myself, I have certain problems, because regulators dare not take risks. When things are good, they don't get credit, but when things go awry, they will be blamed. So that's the nature of human. That's human natures, and they always go with the majority, but the majority is actually the minority. And ladies and gentlemen, I think a few more. Okay, what next? What next? A few more slides. Don't worry, only a few more minutes. A few more minutes. Okay, what next? There are possible options. In jurisdiction where, you always take into account the nature of the society. In Malaysia, we have a different nature. We are not like the Americans, for example, because we are indirect people. You don't, if I want to say thank you in Malaysia, in Malay, my father and mother, they won't say thank you. Instead of one sentence, they will say 4 sentences to say thank you. They will say something like this: golden bananas on a sail away, one ripens on the drawer, a debt of gold we can repay, a debt of kindness is a debt forever. So you see, that's how they say thank you. So if I want to tackle a girl, I want to ask her whether she's married or what, I won't ask her with one sentence. I will ask her with something like this: smoking cigarette, Chinese tobacco. The smoke comes out like a flower. Oh, my lady, may I ask you so? The ring on your finger, who is the owner? So you see, it's, so anyway, since you already clapped, so I have no choice but to conclude. But my conclusion is that pure mutuals from the Sharia viewpoint is the best. Pure mutual. I would go for mutuals, but unfortunately, we have other issues, so that may be problems, but we hope that we can learn from UK and the rest. Wabillahi taufiq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ever entertaining Azman. I didn't know that tackling the mutual subject can be in so many different ways. But just to sort of conclude, really, and perhaps we may have some time for questions. Anyone has a question for our panel? Please.
My question is, sort of sitting here or having this conference in London, it was our dear Prime Minister, as you may recall, created the whole neoliberal concept of demutualization of the industry completely, where building societies were made into PLCs, mutual insurance companies were changed into doing all kinds of things from banking to insurance services. Do you think there is sort of a whole debate, not just debate, but a backlash which is taking place against this neoliberal phenomena of mutualization or mutual benefit insurance companies? And do you think there is a will politically on a global scene to see mutual insurance companies re-emerge?
We are in England, so let the English guy answer. We are in England now.
Thank you. I don't know how to follow this this act, but to give a straight answer to your straight question, yes, I do. I think there is a potential revival. I think the Mutual Deferred Shares Act is an example of that. It went through Parliament with the support of all the main political parties. Up until the last general election in the UK, we had a coalition government, and one of the items on which the coalition agreement focused was the promotion of mutuality. It's now become a requirement for the regulators when making any new regulation in the area of financial services to consider and to specify what impact it's going to have on mutuals. And I think a lot of the problems we've had in the past have been because the regulators have come up with regulations which have which have been designed for stockholder companies and have had a perverse and unforeseen effect on mutuals. But now they're going to have to think about that. So, yes, I think the tide is definitely changing.
Yes, Shabir, I agree with John.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow. My question wasn't just specifically UK-based. The question was because half of Malaysia seems to be studying in UK and they're buying properties in London. Therefore, they would be carrying the package back to Malaysia to provide the same kinds of things that we so incredibly lost in UK.
One sentence to answer that, not 4 sentences. Basically, England was our colonizer, so we will do whatever they do.
Yes, please.
Okay. Azman, this is Ahmed Altak. I'm solicitor. You will not run away. Actually, I'll go back to your territory. Can you please tell us more about the crowdfunding and how they regulate? Actually, they've regulated that because actually it is very unique for a Muslim country to manage to legalize and legalize this the crowdfunding. It is well known, very common here in UK, the crowdfunding. But we'd love to know more about it and about your experience in Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, what happened is that in all the countries that I've seen before this, I don't know the latest development. You are not allowed to get money for, you cannot issue shares and so on. What they have done is that they donate to the company, and then the company will donate some, as I said, some of their items. This is what's happening because under the law it's not allowed to, what they call it, apa? Money apa? I don't know what they call it lah. Huh? Money laundering. Not money laundering. That means deposit. Deposit is not allowed. Deposit taking is not allowed. But in Malaysia, we have developed this platform to be based even on mudarabah or musyarakah or whatever you want to call it. And this is allowed under the current regulations, and I think it's just allowed for one year only. So we are doing, you can do under mudarabah, it's up to you. Musyarakah, whatever.
Is it more like an investment?
Yes. No, you can invest under musyarakah, for example. Let's say you have 10 people giving 1 million each, that means you have 10 million. Now this 10 million, you put in the pool, you have, and you appoint that guy. That guy is your wakil and manages the money. And then under musyarakah, the profits need not be the proportion of distribution of profits need not be the same as the proportion of the capital. So it's up to you. So when they agree, then the wakil, the manager will give according to the contract.
Thank you. I'm being asked to wrap up the session. Mutuality, I just want to sort of give one sentence that, and actually it applies to Takaful as well, that, you know, it is all about protecting the society and investing in it. That's really the mutuality we want out of the USP that we have out of Takaful. Thank you very much. Please give a big round of